We have such a treat today. We have Gina Perks here who is going to show us fantabulous feathers and feels. We can't wait.
That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful, and you made up a word, I think.
I did. I love to make up words.
And
it's fun.
Gina has also brought a beautiful quilt to show us, and we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about that right off the bat. What's the name of that?
This is my newest show quilt, and it's called Ambrosia. It is full of just all kinds of fun details and applique, quilting, embellishments, all kinds of stuff.
Now, do you do hand applique?
I do both, hand and machine applique. I also do machine applique at the Longarm machine, so I do both. This quilt contains both hand and machine applique. It began with hand-dyed fabrics that I dyed myself.
Oh, you do that too? Oh my goodness.
I do. That's
great.
I like to dabble in everything. I like to have my hand in all parts of the quilt making process. So yeah, this quilt began with just basically white fabrics, not muslin, but silks and satines instead. It also has some velvet. Ooh. So all kinds of fun fabrics that you wouldn't normally think to use in a quilt.
And how do you design it? Do you just come up with
So I find inspiration just lurking everywhere. Catalogs, wallpaper, rugs, clothing, earrings, jewelry, everywhere. So with this particular quilt, I was kind of thumbing through a Pottery Barn catalog looking for a rug and ended up finding a quilt design.
Wow.
So this butterfly design was inspired by a bedspread that I saw in Pottery Barn. And I changed it up a lot, obviously, but what inspired me was the butterflies that they incorporated into the bedspread that had little fun designs within the wings. And so that's where it began. Most of my quilts are designed in a symmetrical fashion. So you can see that it's actually just a fourth of the design is then mirror imaged and repeated. Or actually it's more like an eighth. So it's just this little pie piece is designed and then mirror imaged and repeated throughout.
Wow, you've done a beautiful job. I can see the velvet in the body of the butterflies now.
Yeah, that's
And it looks like you've used quite a few specialty threads too.
I have, yeah. I've used a lot of silk thread. I like silk thread because it's so fine and it comes in a real small weight, so you can get real close with your quilting. Excellent. So I like to use that, and now they offer silk thread with metallic wrap.
Ooh.
So that's what I played around with a lot on there.
That's new. That's great.
Yeah, it made it really dazzle,
So
which I
on
like.
some of those specialty threads, maybe the viewers have some of these questions. Do you have some tricks that you can tell us about on using those specialty threads? Okay.
I'm determined to use whatever on
thread
my gammal.
Okay.
And I don't think that there should be any limitations to what we use.
I agree.
It's a machine, and if you treat it good and you just make a little adjustment here and there, you can do it. So yeah, some of the problems that I was finding with the threads were that they would kind of want to puddle underneath the
holder where you set them down.
You set your thread spools. Typically decorative threads are a little bit smaller than the permacore, let's say. So they want to puddle underneath, and that's where some of the breakage can take place is when it wraps.
Caught underneath. I've had that happen.
It wraps around it. So what I do is I just make a little base for that thread to sit on out of just plain old batting, which we all have batting laying around, little scraps of batting.
Is it like a cotton? Or
just a cotton batting, 2 layers, cut out a little circle, place it over my, my thread holder, and then I place my decorative thread in place, and then over the decorative thread I just wrap this little net, which anybody can go to a florist shop and get these. They're packaging nets for flowers.
Oh, good. Okay.
And the florists are more than happy to get rid of them. So you can just go in and say, "Can I please take these off your hand? I like these little nets for my quilting."
So Gina, let's get started on those fantabulous feathers and feels.
Let's do it. That's what we're here for.
How do we start?
For the fun. Okay, now I like to draw out a little something first because I want a little bit of a guideline for what I'm doing. And these types of feathers are a little bit more custom, so they're not so much the loose freehand feathers that are a lot of fun to do. This is just a technique that's more suitable for custom work.
Okay. And you're using?
And so what I'm using today is just an air erasable marking pen.
Okay.
It goes away quickly, so you have to be
Ready
willing
to sew, huh?
and committed to sew right then and there because it's leaving, I promise you. Now, if you don't have a lot of time to quilt and you know you might have other daily activities that are going to take you away from your quilting, you can opt for other marking implements. Like this pen is a good one. It's actually not a pen, it's a pencil. A Soline ceramic lead is nice and it shows up well on dark fabrics. If you're using a light fabric, you can use a water erasable pen, and those will work good too. But
now, where do you get these? Just
I offer them on my website, but
great.
Anywhere they're
good.
Yeah, we can find. If we want something, we're going to find it, aren't we? We quilters are determined to find what we need, our tools. But I do offer them on my website. But I'm just going to kind of freehand here my spine. Okay, and that's what I call, most quilters probably do call them a spine, and that's just any line that's going to give you your direction to start placing your feather plumes. All right, and I'm going to make a double spine here. So what I'm giving myself here is space inside the spine for my traveling stitches, which I'll talk about as I start stitching.
Okay.
And now I'm just drawing my plumes. Okay, and a plume is just, I like to think of it as a half of a heart shape. This is just your traditional feather shape.
Almost looks like a comma there, doesn't it?
It does.
Yep.
Yeah, comma. Could be a question mark, I guess, if you dotted it. So I'm just drawing them right along here. And when I draw my feather plumes, I like to pay close attention to this angle here, the upper edge of the feather to the spine. Okay. So you kind of want to keep that angle consistent. And I think it's probably about a 45-degree angle is what you want to stay with. And you want that consistent. So you want to avoid the feathers that just kind of come in at a 90-degree angle. The fingers, they look like fingers.
Yes.
You don't want finger feathers.
No.
You want fantabulous feathers. So pay attention to that angle. So as any spine that you use, whether it's an aggressive curve or just a gradual curve, you want to pay attention to that angle, that it stays consistent. So just as your curve changes, so do the shapes of your feathers with that angle consistent. So we're going to bring the machine right on over here. And I like to get a little bit of control when I'm doing smaller work. So what I use is I have my extended base here put on the machine for me. That's going to give me a little platform to rest this fancy little sock here.
Well, that is a fancy
and I promise
little sock.
it was brand new. Never been worn.
Okay.
So
that's important.
It is. It is. Now, especially for camera, you don't want to use a dirty holy sock.
No.
So this is a new sock filled with walnut shells, which you can get at a pet store. Yeah, and so it just gives it, they're just really fine, and they use them for bird cages and things like that for the bottom of bird cages. This also haven't been used, the walnut shells.
Oh, good.
So we're good.
All right.
We're good here. So this is just going to give me a little bit of drag.
Okay.
So that way I'm not just all over the place. My designs are going to be a little bit more controlled, and you got to be careful that you're just doing a small space because you don't want to run over your sock. So what I've got here is just both my top thread and my bobbin thread, which I've pulled up. And what I'm going to do here is just wrap both pieces around a little corsage pin. And I'm just going to kind of hold that taut there.
Okay.
And so this just eliminates that awful bird nest that sometimes you get. Now, when I do my spines that are a real gradual curve, like this one is, I like to have some kind of a guide that I can just kind of hold so that I can have a little bit more control. Sometimes you get a little wobbly. And I'm going to get started. I'm stitching in the constant mode. I'm not using the regulator because that's the way I learned. So I've kind of just become accustomed to using the the constant mode. So that's what we're going to be playing around with today. And I like to encourage people to play around with constant mode because
I agree.
You can do different things with it. You can get smaller stitches. You can just play around with it. It has its times when it's appropriate. And now I'm just going to come back down here on this side. So as you can see, I just have so far just one stop and one start. Now what I need to do is, I think I'm going to start on this side. So what I need to do is get from this point over to this point.
Without stopping and starting
exactly.
your thread. Okay.
So that's why I've created this little travel space here. And that's in the form of my spine. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start stitching a fun little design. And what this is going to be is kind of a zebra design. So now I'm to the start of my first feather plume.
Okay.
Wasn't that cool?
Yes.
So now I'm going to stitch my first feather plume. Okay. And now I need to get from this point to the start of my next plume. Okay, so instead of stitching back over my first feather,
which is hard to do.
Yeah, it does. It is.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to stay in control. So instead of that, I'm just gonna go ahead and embellish the upper edge of this feather with some little scallops and work my way over. Now I can stitch that next feather plume.
How pretty.
And then again, on the upper edge of this, my feather plume number 3.
Yeah, made it way fancier.
See how cute it is?
Yes.
With no backtracking.
That's the best part.
It is. And now let's say you really aren't a fan of scallops. Let's say you have kind of an artistic quilt. You can add little zigzags.
So just kind of go along with the fabric or the design?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
So let's say you like little curlicues. You can curlicue the edge of that feather. But see, it's just eliminating any backtracking. Now when I start doing some of this smaller, more intricate work, I like to adjust my speed a little bit slower so that I can stay in control. And I'm constantly just adjusting that speed, and it's okay to do that.
And you're still in constant.
Yep,
yes.
I sure am.
Good for
now
you.
I'm going to add a little bit of a geometric shape to the upper edge here. Oop, hello machine. We are rolling. Okay, so now I've got this kind of square design. Now here's another option, just some little small circles. And you can see how close I get with this fine silk thread and how small my designs can become without that big thread buildup.
You're really good at those little circles. Good for you.
Practice.
Yes.
Practice, practice, practice. And now I added another little kind of a jagged edge there. So now I've got to come back. I like to start my feathers at the bottom and work up. So now I've got to travel down, and what I'm going to do is just use that space I gave myself to travel along. So I'm just stitching. So it's kind of like multitasking. So I'm getting even more quilting on my piece, but it has another purpose of eliminating that backtracking and getting to the next point. And I can feel that I'm a little bit slow for that design, so I just stop for a second.
Change your speed.
And just speed up a little bit. And you can tell if you're at the right speed, if you like the way your stitches look, and if you feel comfortable stitching them. So sometimes you might feel like you're really struggling to keep up with the machine, and you want to slow it down so you can be in control. But I personally just like the constant mode because I like the rhythm of the machine. That sound of that, just that hum of that machine really keeps me stitching along smoothly. And that's just my personal opinion. I'm sure some people find that they like the regulated mode.
I like to go back and forth depending on what I'm doing. You know, when I'm stitching in the ditch or I'm going around applique, I I like the regulated.
Exactly. It's got a time and a place, doesn't it? So now I'm over here.
Shape, or you called it a zebra?
It can be either or. So now
Very nice.
we're here and we're at our next starting point and ready to do the next side. And what I think I'm going to do, and since you already saw those traditional feathers, I think I'm going to change it up a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
So now let's say I'm going to use a white pen just so that we can see those lines instead. And sometimes we do that, don't we? Sometimes we have it marked out and we decide, not feeling it.
Yeah.
So let's change it up a bit. So you can just grab a different marking implement and just train your brain. Okay, we're looking at the white line, looking at the white line. So here we are going to do a feather that's a little bit more masculine. So everybody loves feathers. Well, most people do. And sometimes you have a masculine quilt that just doesn't lend itself to those feminine, pretty curvy feathers. So sometimes you want something that's a little bit more masculine. And so I kind of thought of these that take on a little bit of a leaf-like shape. And so really it's the same idea. You still pay attention to this angle here. So that's still at the 45-degree angle. And you're just going to draw up. And instead of curving it in with a rounded shape, you're just going to come to a point and then curve it back.
And it looks like that air erasable is just about gone.
See what I'm telling you? You've got
really
it's a race.
Fast.
It's a race. Okay, I'm just going to stitch this next side now. And this is the masculine feather. So it comes out to the point and comes on in. And again, I'm going to embellish that upper edge of my masculine feather with little leaf-like shapes. Okay, come out to the point and embellish that edge so that we don't have that thread buildup from backtracking. And that just kind of gives you an idea of this fun masculine feather. Okay, now we are going to play around with a feather design that isn't embellished along the upper edge. So let's say you just really didn't like that, and you just really want your traditional feathers, but with minimal or no backtracking at all.
Okay.
So again, I've went ahead and stitched out the spine, which is doubled, so it has this open space in here that's going to allow me to travel along. So I just kind of created a little road for myself. And then I'm going to utilize this space along the outer edge of my feathers for more traveling space for stitching. All right, so now we are just going to go ahead and get started. I went ahead and marked my feather plumes. Okay, so I'm going to stitch that first plume. Now what I want to do is get from this feather plume to the next. Okay, so I need to travel, which typically people might travel along that spine, but I don't want that because I want no backtracking. So instead, I'm just going to enhance this inner edge here, and I'm going to slow it down because I can't stay in control. Oh, that's way too slow. All right, you got to just kind of play around until you find a happy medium. And so what I'm going to do here is just a fun, fantabulous little filler. I kind of like to call them wiggle worms because they look like little earthworms from my garden. I get inspired all over the place for quilting designs, and these were inspired from my garden. So you just kind of wiggle your way in and out. It's kind of a little variation of meandering. So it kind of is neat to use in that it's real nondescript, like meandering and stippling, but it's pretty quick to do.
And you didn't go on the other side so that you can
I
do that
left
on the
that
other side.
exactly. Yep, you caught on to that. Yeah, I left that space open because I'm going to need it when I come back. Don't our minds have to be so active?
Yes.
This is good for us.
This isn't mindless.
This is good for us.
Yes.
So now I'm ready to stitch my next plume. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and stop just so I can explain to you what's going on here. I stopped at this when the two plumes met, and now I've got to travel up over here so that I can stitch out again. Okay. So instead of backtracking along my plume, guess what I'm going to do?
Meander.
I'm going to do some kind of fantabulous fill to get there.
Okay.
And I think let's do something a little different this time.
Okay.
So let's do, I call this fill design Candlelight. It's just basically kind of little leaf-like shapes that alternate from right to left the tip. Okay.
Oh, that's
You know
pretty.
the teardrop kind of peacock feather shapes
Yes.
that we've done through the years. A lot of quilters have done them. This is just a little bit of a variation of that. So guess what I'm doing here? I am beginning that fill process, which can be very time consuming, right? So now I'm kind of gonna get a start on that.
Getting
Gonna
head
get a little
start.
jump start on it. Now I'm not gonna go ahead and do all of my filler design, but I'm just gonna do enough to travel. Now, again, I'm in the middle. Now I gotta use my brain, switch it over to remember, okay,
What you're
now
doing out there.
now I'm over here and I'm doing wiggle worms. Don't do candlelight yet, not yet. Okay, so my wiggle worms. Now I'm back up to the next plume. Now, okay, use that brain again. All right, candlelight. So I can travel up. And you can toss in any filler design you like. But what's fun about alternating the designs is that you don't get bored.
I should say not. You gotta really keep
you're
on your
doing,
toes.
you're just going and going and going. So you're just gonna work your way up until you have your completed feather, and you can see that there's no backtracking whatsoever. So you don't have that buildup.
People wonder how you did that. And
Now
now
they
we
know. Yep.
This has been absolutely wonderful. You've shown us some really great tips today. And
thank you.
I know the viewers have enjoyed getting to know you. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.